out today to the English service. I appreciate you trust my English enough to be able to preach to you. And that you've not headed next door. But I do really look forward to obviously having a new chapter in the church, seeing the Mandarin preaching go on, which is really awesome. I know we run Bible discussions every week, and I try my luck with my Mandarin skills, which are like below zero. I have no Mandarin skills, and they never know what I'm saying, even in English, regardless of whether I'm speaking English, Mandarin, they never know. So it's really good that we can actually help, our fellow brothers and sisters and the people that come along. But it is a privilege to be up here to preach the word today. We've been going through the miracle series. We are on a miracle number, you count it, go back and count through. We're on a big number. We've got through a lot of miracles. And today we're getting through another one, which is pretty awesome. So last week we actually looked at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were put into the furnace, and then they didn't die, and it was fire, and it was hot. And so this week we're still in the book of Daniel, but it's basically Daniel's life story. We look at the different miracles that go on, or one of them in particular. And the big miracle we're going to focus on is Daniel and the lion's den. And so I want to tell you an African proverb. It says here, until the lion learns to write the story will always glorify the hunter. So imagine being taken from your home at a young age, being put into a place where you don't belong, held against your will in a foreign land, given food you don't know where it's come from. Where you came from, you were treated as royalty, but here not so much. Now, instead, you're locked up and fed the scraps the king doesn't want. You watch your leader run on all fours with his claws while covered in fur. When you speak, it can be heard from miles and miles away. You have a nice set of hair growing around your face. And they made a movie about you in where a witch tries to kill you. But this story is not about a lion. It's about Daniel. And the link there is, Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe. That's kind of But basically, we're getting into the story of Daniel today. Sorry, that was a bad joke. I thought it was funny. That's okay. You don't have to. It's a stretch. Yeah, I know. I tried. We won't do that next week. So the meaning of Daniel is, God is my judge, which is a pretty big name to live up to. But you'll see through Daniel's life that he lived up to this motto, God is my judge, not man. And up until this point in Daniel's life we're about to look at now, he's already been through so much. As a teenager, Jerusalem, his home, was destroyed, burnt to the ground by King Nebuchadnezzar. His friends didn't burn in a furnace. His king goes crazy, turns into an animal. He sees wild visions and dreams, interprets them for others, interprets them for himself. And at one point, a human hand came and wrote things on the wall. And the weird thing about it is the hand wasn't connected to the body. So that's probably why it was weird. And now we watch as God rescues him from yet another situation in his life. And so, going through studying out Daniel, learning about lions. I remember my first time seeing a lion, going to a zoo. We have like a kind of a country zoo out in the bush. It's in the middle of nowhere. And you're just driving along and then you're like, is that a giraffe? Like, it's really weird. It's just... it's smack bang in the middle of nowhere. And they advertise, they got lions, they got all these things. But the lion wasn't the thing that terrified me. We went in and, they give you a tour and you go up to each cage and they tell you about the animal. And then the zookeeper or whatever starts telling us about these baboons. And they're like, oh man, these are a vicious beast. They could tear, a small child, they could just tear them apart. I'm like, well, I'm a small child. Why are you saying this to me? So we went home that night, and I had nightmares. I was dreaming about them coming to the house, trying to sneak their way in. Lions did not terrify me, but baboons did. But today, we might get into the story of the lions. So point number 1, would I lie to you? Daniel chapter 6, verse 1. We'll start off from verse 1. It says, it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king would not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the entire kingdom. At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. But they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him, because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, and advisors and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. So here King Darius, he just previously has conquered Babylon and now has taken to rule it. And he establishes his kingdom. So he uses some of the people that were already nobility or higher up in that place and then brings some of his own. And he establishes the same principle that actually, if you go back to Genesis, that Jethro taught Moses, that lead through groups. That small groups lead bigger groups and bigger groups, and that's how you lead a population. You see, he has the 3 administrators, which Daniel was one, the 120 satraps, and then advisors, and then the kingdom below them. But Jesus did the same thing with his disciples. He had his inner 3, Peter, James, and John. And then after Jesus left and the church was about to begin, they had the 120 disciples to begin with. So again, you can see this principle is practiced all throughout. What you can really learn is when you follow biblical principles, they work. It's awesome. Just wherever you go in the Bible, you follow the principles throughout it. It works. I know as a church, we give generously and we get given to generously. I know even Joe got up and preached that throughout COVID, none of us, not one of us, lost our jobs because we had a conviction. I'll still give to God during some of the hardest times of the 21st century, losing COVID and we can't work. And yet he's like, God was like, I'm still going to come through. So when you put biblical practices in place, they actually work. So in this account that we just looked at, you see 3 kinds of people. The good, the bad, and not the ugly. I don't know what the king looked like, but the peer pressured. So we'll look at the good. Daniel, the uncorrupted politician. I don't think that's a word you can use today. Can we really see uncorrupted politicians? Well, let's learn from Daniel. Of everyone in Daniel's story, I personally relate to him the least. You read here, Daniel 6, 4-5, it says, "Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent." And yeah, I look at Daniel, I'm like, I got nothing on you, man. Like, he has qualities up there with Jesus. Like, it's, Daniel, and you got Jesus and these incredible men of the Bible. And I'm like, I could have probably been one of those at one point in my life. Maybe not negligent, but the other 2. Maybe trustworthy, but not the other 2. And this man was always, every single day, found to be each of those. He was honest, trustworthy in everything that he did, neither corrupt nor negligent. And there was a Spanish composer once, writes music, named Manuel de Falla, who was notoriously lax about answering correspondence, about getting back to people, and a large pile of mail kind of piled up on his desk over the years, which he was like, I'll get to at some point. And so when he received the news of the death of the famous painter and his friend Ignacio, Falla was deeply distressed, and he said, "What a pity. He died before I could answer his letter, which he sent me 5 years ago." And so the moral of the story is, always do your follow-up. Don't be negligent. Really embrace the principle of Daniel. I was doing follow-up a few months ago, I think it was last year, for a push service, and, reaching out to people that you've evangelized months ago, years ago, and this one guy reaches back and he's like, "Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I've been praying that someone would, come into my life, that I want to get right with God." And I looked back and I'd met him 2 years ago, and he'd just been sitting in my phone collecting dust. So in that way, I'm not like Daniel, so I really needed this lesson myself. So he really conducted every part of his life. I find that very difficult to understand how to. I get you can be really honest and trustworthy with this, or very, disciplined in this, but every aspect of Daniel's life, he was seen at doing a good job. And so Daniel was so good at his job that his boss wanted to give him his. The king wanted to set Daniel over the kingdom. So the question is, would your boss want you to oversee all the operations because of the work you do? If not, why not? Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Daniel understood this principle because he was close to God. So if you struggle to give your whole heart at work, are you really doing it for God? Are you actually close to God? I remember having a sales job. My first job that I got while I was in New Zealand. I just got baptized like a month or a week before. I don't know. It was very recent. I was like, all right, I'm here, God. I'm doing it for you. I want to live for you. And then he gave me a job. And I was like, awesome. And it was sales. And you only get paid if you make a sale. And you know, it was, I'm lively and stuff, but that's a hard job. You've got to always be on every hour of the day. And then, 8 hours, you don't get any sales. Well, you've got to go to 10 hours and you're still going to be happy. I'm like, yeah, but that's not really why I didn't quit. I'll tell you why. But anyway, it was good because they're obviously giving me an income, but they expected more and more time from me. We're going to go on a week-long trip to a city 2 hours away and sell there every day. And then we'll go on these different trips further and further. And I was like, well, I just become a Christian. I can't, give up my relationship with God just so I can make more money. And so, I started looking for other jobs, and the boss found out. And so I go in one morning, and, I think it's just a nice, meeting between me and him. And, he's like, oh, so you're looking for other jobs? I was like, yeah, but don't worry. Like, I'm not leaving until I find something. And he's like, probably best we just shake hands here and call it. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then I didn't really understand until, he walked me to grab my bag, and we walked out the front door, and he didn't come with me. And I was like, oh, I'm fired. And then I was like, oh, okay, he doesn't want me to work here anymore. But in that moment, I was like, I just lost my job. But I was like, God, you saw this. You witnessed that whole situation. And I don't feel bad about that because I put you first. And it's in that way, giving my whole heart. I did give it, and then I still gave my whole heart afterwards. And God came through and blessed me with another job. But I can't say that was always the case. Before I was a Christian, I lived quite recklessly and got up to too much things that I probably shouldn't have done. And there was, times where I'd come into work either under the influence or, way still kind of hungover from the day before. And there was one time where I was just so out of it that I lost my vision. I was standing there serving a customer. I worked at a ski resort, and so I'd set up the snowboards and put their feet where they need to be so that they can snowboard correctly. And I'm serving a customer, and then my vision just goes. It was blurry. I couldn't see anything. And so I just kind of had to guess where I was putting the foot bindings and be like, hopefully that's it. And I very much know, I don't know how much longer I kept that job, but you can really see when you give your whole heart to a job and work at it with all your heart for the Lord, He blesses you, and when you don't, you don't. So amen. Daniel really gave his heart to this job, even though his boss, was not a follower of God. So that's the good we can learn from Daniel. Don't be negligent. Give your whole heart, even if it's a job you don't like. And then there's the bad in this story. The deceitful and corrupt satraps, these administrators, they didn't like being exposed. Why did the satraps want to have Daniel removed? It's because his righteousness would have exposed their corrupt plans, their wicked hearts, their deeds. He wouldn't have taken bribes like they did. He wouldn't have lied about where the money went or where it came from like they did. And he wouldn't have worried about his reputation or looking bad in front of others like they were. There was always about status and, as long as I look better than that guy or, get him to throw him under the bus for me. I remember when I was in high school, I very much didn't understand what leadership was. I thought it was a title and then that's it. You look good in front of others, and that's all you have to do. And so I was voted in. We have in Australia something called a school captain, basically. And they get to do little leadership responsibility roles throughout your year 12 to, train you a bit. Looks good on your resume. And so I got voted in as that. And I was like, sweet, I'm a leader. Look at me, I got the title. And then I remember having a conversation with the principal. And I was shocked that he was so disappointed in us. I was like, but I'm the school captain. And he's like, yeah, but you do nothing. I've asked you to just get your cohort, your other year 12s, to come in early on a Monday to set up the chairs for assembly, something simple. And I was like, "Oh, sir, but you don't understand that. Like, they're year 12s. Like, they don't want to come in early on a Monday. That's crazy." And he's like, that's the point. You're meant to motivate. You're meant to lead them. School captain. I was like, "Oh, man. Yeah, no, that's not possible at all." And so I really clung onto it because you get a little badge and everything. I was like, "Yeah, I'm school captain." And I did nothing. And now I look back, I was like, that makes sense why he was disappointed. I'm disappointed myself. That was not leadership at all. So Daniel really teaches us a bunch here of, it's not about your position. It's not about how good you look. It's about the impact you can have on people. So here, these satraps, they were afraid of their actions, their lives. Just what they were doing was being exposed by Daniel living righteously, which you can see it's a common thing throughout the Bible. But John talks about here in John chapter 3, verse 19, it says, "This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed." So these satraps, instead of changing to stop their actions, to change and come into the light, to live a life that's more productive, more beneficial for so many people, they try to take out the one guy that would expose them and probably not let them keep their jobs because he would have become their boss. So their solution, very creative here, feed him to the lions. And then if we can get the king in on it, well then that's a done deal. There's no going back. And so I just want to encourage you, wherever you're at in life, if you're like, "I don't really like my coworker, this brother is annoying me, this new roommate I've moved in," or you even you're going on a mission team, and then the thought comes, "Feed this man to the lions," please stop. You've gone too far. Your thoughts, come back, read the Bible a bit more or something. I think that's such an extreme thought that let's get him eaten by a wild animal is a pretty extreme thought. And so if you're going to the king and asking him to change the laws to get this man eaten by lions, maybe just check where you're at. I don't think he's the issue in that situation. It could be you. So I don't know your situation right now, but that's just a helpful bit of advice there. But so God uses lions all throughout the Bible. He used one to humble a prophet who didn't listen to him. Samson showed his strength by tearing a lion in half. But trying to use a lion to take out a coworker that's doing a better job than you, not really where God was going with the lion's analogy. And there's so many times where I'm just like, man, the Bible's really convicting. Before, as a disciple, I worked at a summer camp. So you go in and you hang out with kids, you do activities, and just have a lot of fun. And they're there for a week or two. And so every week you'd have like a celebration that the kids were leaving, and a little party, and a graduation ceremony. They each get a certificate. And they'd award an award for like the best camp counselor of the week or the best staff of the week. And it's just like, I guess, nice to make your staff feel appreciated. And so then the final one of the summer, so we're there for, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And so the final one is bigger, and they give out bigger awards. They give out the weekly ones, and then they give out staff of the year and camp counselor of the year. And then, they're announcing them, and then they said, the staff of the year goes to Jordan Totenhofer. And I was like, whoa, I was the best staff member. And I was, filled with quite joy and pride and all these things. And people clapped and cheered. And then they announced, and then the camp counselor of the year, and they announced whoever that was. And people cheered more. And I think at that point, I was like, man, I wish I could have a lion, eat that guy. Why is that award better? I feel like staff of the year sounds pretty cool. But apparently camp counselor of the year is one better, and that guy got it. So, amen. They're probably always in a situation where we feel like that. But your solution, go to God in prayer. So the third person in the story of this account, you have the good, the bad, and the peer pressured. A king with no conviction. He's approached by the people that are supposedly serving him, but because they outnumbered him, these are meant to be wise people, they're meant to be helping support him, he blindly agrees. He hears that the worship and the praise will be towards him, and so instead of taking time to consider the consequences, he lets his pride and his ego, his desire to be great, outweigh his better judgment. In the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it talks about the concept that all man desires and craves is this this concept of wanting to be important, wanting to be great, and to be appreciated. And for this king, this opportunity arose. Everyone prayed to me for 30 days of the year. Everyone bowed down to me. And so, his better judgment was gone because this idea of being great seemed so awesome. And as you read throughout the story, you'll see that later on he wishes it could have been undone. He wishes he didn't agree to it. And so have you ever done things in your life that you wish could have been undone? Like, why did I do that? Why did I give in to that? I remember as a kid, my brother kicked a hole in the wall. Probably was mad about something. And it was a rental house, so I don't think we ever got it fixed. They might have fixed it after we moved out, or they bulldozed it. I don't know. But it stayed there for years. You'd always walk past it and stuff. And so I remember one time I had my little Hot Wheels track and the ramp and stuff. And so I just set it up in front of the hole, and I'm just sending cars down. Hits the wall. And then one would go in. I'm like, oh, sick. And, I realized I stick my little hand in there, and I couldn't get it out. And so by the time we moved out, I had many Hot Wheels left in that hole in the wall that I never got back. And so there's something I'm like, those can't be undone. So I've lost all those Hot Wheels. Hopefully they weren't valuable or anything like that. But to this day, there's so many things in our life where, like, I wish I could take that back, or something we say that we wish we could take back. We can always be forgiven, and obviously God really shows us what that looks like, but we can't take things back. Once they're said, they're said. And there's so many times in my life where I wish that wasn't the reality. I wish I could just help them erase that 5 seconds. Last week, Kevin came home from a date. He had a great time, just an encouragement, hang out with the brothers and sisters. He just had a lot of fun, and he comes home, so he's excited. And then, he was asking me a question that, it was just a bit of miscommunication that I thought he should have known. And I was jokingly being like, you should know this. But then at one point, I just wasn't joking. I just kept going until the point I was just hurting him. And Gabe was standing there watching like, Jordan, are you all right? Are you kidding? Are you serious? I just didn't stop. And, Kevin left after that, really hurt by what I was doing. And I was sitting there like, why did I do that? And in his heart, he's incredible for being willing to forgive me, and Gabe as well. As Gabe's just been baptized, and he's watching his leader just lay someone out. He's like, what is happening? And so I really appreciate their hearts to forgive, but I can't take back what I've said. I said what I said, and that's really just in my sin, that we can always be forgiven, but we can't take back what we can say. And so it means we need to have such wisdom and just strength in God to know the right decisions to make in that moment. Because once that king made that decision, sure, I'll agree to this verdict. The law was in place. There was nothing he could do about it, no matter how much he liked Daniel or not. And so I just really want to encourage you that no matter what you're going through, no matter how big or small the issues you're going through today, you can always be forgiven of them. You can always be given a second chance, even if you've messed up or feel like you've gone too far. That, whether you're a Christian here today or you're not, get open with the person that brought you on. Get open with your discipler, because there is always something going on in our hearts. There is something that God can really help us through, and that, Satan's trying to pull us away from. So I want to give you a challenge to open up about what's going on in your life. There's a reason God has even brought you here today, and really get help, the help that you need from God. So point number 2, lion feed. Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. We'll continue on in Daniel's story here. So here the king's he's issued the verdict. It's set in stone. There's no going back. And it continues. It says, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God, as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish the decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? The king answered, the decree stands, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you. your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. So Daniel here, hearing the news that he can't pray to anyone but the king, goes home, opens his window, and continues to pray to God, unfazed by the laws that they've just put in place. He comes before God in thanksgiving, just as he had done before, as it says there. So when life turns upside down and things don't go your way, are your prayers still prayers of thanks? Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." So if your prayers don't begin with thanksgiving, regardless of the situation, it's going to be very difficult to see God working through the current one you're in. Imagine what Daniel was thanking God for in that moment. You know, he opens up the windows to Jerusalem. And he's probably thinking that, "Thank you, God, for not letting me die in the destruction of Jerusalem when I was, 15 or however young he was. Thank you, God, for helping him grow bigger and stronger from just eating vegetables when he first entered Babylon, when all of his counterparts were given meat. And he was like, I'm not going to go against my conviction on eating unholy food, and so I'll only eat vegetables. And God allowed him to grow bigger and stronger. He probably thanks God for rescuing his best friends from the blazing furnace because they wouldn't bow down to a golden statue. For helping him understand the writing of the wall for King Belshazzar, instead of, misunderstanding it completely. For helping him interpret visions and dreams for Nebuchadnezzar, for Belshazzar. For continually putting him in a position of influence. The Daniel was highly regarded every time a new king took over. And so you can imagine, when he went to God for help in this situation, he knew God would come through, as he always has and as he always will. And so in my life, whenever I'm in a tough spot, there's things I like to thank God for. I think my salvation, that God rescued me from my life through my sister. That if it wasn't for her persistence, her love, just her willingness to not let go of seeing me become a disciple, I sit there and just thank God for that. I don't deserve any of that. I think for living here in Australia, we do live in one of the most blessed countries in the world today. Like, we are truly gifted, and I think, I just have to go and thank God for that I don't deserve, because there's so many countries that, there's wars, there's corruption, there's all these things, and yet we are here able to express our faith so freely and not have any issues with that. I think access to higher education, it's not a right, it's a privilege, and I get given that privilege every single year. But the friends I have around me, in the kingdom and even outside of the kingdom, I think it was really cool. We've started this evangelism on Instagram. We're just learning, we're imitating from the leaders around the world, and they're teaching us how to evangelize on Instagram. And so we've been posting stories about God and studying the Bible and stuff online, and we reach out to people. And one of my mates from when I was, I can't remember, 5 or 6, like we were friends for a solid 5 or 6 years growing up, best friends. He just randomly reached out to me on Instagram like, "Hey mate, long time no see, but I saw your stories and I really like them." And I was like, "Oh sweet," because I've only been posting stuff about God, so that's probably what he's referring to. And so I was actually able to call him up yesterday and just chat, just catch up. I haven't seen him in so long, we haven't chatted, I don't know what's going on in his life. And it was awesome. We were able to just share about where he's at, and he's like, I still believe in God and stuff. I don't really have a church I'm going to at the moment. And it was just a chance for me to not only reconnect, but give him a chance to get to know, God deeper in the kingdom. Because I was like, that's awesome. We're sending a church to Brisbane in a few months, and I'm going to go up there to see the first service. Do you want to come with me? And then we could get a coffee after. And he's like, you know what? I'd love that. And so I think it's just awesome that, I can just go there and thank God for not only the friends I have right now that help keep me spiritual, but friends that still want to seek God after all of these years. And so you can imagine what Daniel was really thanking God for in his prayers, even though he was going through this tough situation. So regardless of what you thank God for, the situations will still come. So you better have prayed well. And so then Daniel, despite going to God in prayer, despite praying all these things, he is still thrown into the lion's den. Despite, opening up and really going to God 3 times a day, he prayed every single day. Despite the king liking him and wanting to rescue him, spending the day trying to get Daniel out of going to the lion's den, he's still thrown in. Despite the situation arising from wicked men with wicked intentions, trying to hurt a man of God, he's still thrown into the lion's den. And so why would God allow all of this to happen, even though this is a righteous man of God and these are wicked plans from wicked men? Well, otherwise, where would the miracle be? And so, where is the great sermon unless there is a miracle that comes before it? Where is the life-changing testimony? Where is the chance to evangelize and impact more people unless there's a struggle beforehand and a miracle that really comes through? Back in World War II, I believe it was, there was an elderly woman, and she walked out of what seemed probably worse than a Daniel being in a lion's den. She was leaving the Ravensbrück concentration camp, where there were countless human beings being systematically starved and worked to death. As the heavy gates closed behind her, Corrie ten Boom could hardly believe that she was alive and free. She'd been arrested by the Nazis for hiding Jews in her home in Holland. And she and her family believed in God, a God who gives refuge to all. And her and her family had committed themselves to this dangerous work. This quiet matron in her 50s had not imagined she'd survive the horrors of this labor camp. But God has sustained her through this, this enduring ordeal. Corrie saw many women, abused and hurt at Ravensbrück. Many perished, including her dear sister Betsy. But many of those women died with the name of Jesus on their lips, the witness of these 2 sisters. And she said, and those women, Corrie wrote, were well worth all of that suffering. Finally, as a result of what turned out to be a clerical error, Corrie was released. 1 week later, a week after her release, all the women her age at Ravensbrück were gassed. As she walked out of this lion's den, this place of unspeakable suffering, Corrie had learned something invaluable, that this is the testimony she would give all over the world. There is no place on earth so dark, so deep, that God's love is not deeper still. So Daniel here discovered that God's love is deep enough to penetrate the stone that's sealing this lion's den. He found his God to be very present and help in times of trouble, because Daniel had always been very present with his Lord. So you might be dealing with your own lion's den right now, but just remember the same Lord who delivered Daniel will deliver you too. So are you as present with God as you want him to be present in your situation? If not, I'd encourage you, go out and pray like Daniel. So point number 3, bringing it to a close, living freed. He's in the lion's den. He's sentenced to go there for 1 night. And the king has a restless sleep. He has a worse sleep than Daniel did, which is, an interesting situation to put it. But it continues here. Daniel 6, verse 19, it says, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you continually serve, been able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouth of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So not only here did the king care deeply about Daniel, but more so God cared deeply. Daniel trusted in God to rescue him. In Proverbs 28 it says, "The wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion." So although it probably would have been one of the strangest nights of his life, he knew he was in God's hands. So when can you really say that you got to curl up next to a lion while you slept for the night? Now, I'm not married, but maybe some of you married couples have felt like that. I don't know. That's definitely up to you. You go and figure that out with God. All I can say is God will rescue you. But your actions have consequences. That is the reality. All the men that caused Daniel to be put in this predicament were not only held accountable and suffered the same treatment they put him in, but their families were too. Our sin affects those around us, whether we want it to or not. Unspiritual Bible talk leader. It affects your Bible talk. There's many times where I wasn't leading my Bible talk and it affected my Bible talk. You know, people didn't want to come. They didn't want to be a part of our family because they're like, this is the guy we're following? No, thanks. Unspiritual household leader. I know when it was just me and Chris, we lived together. Yeah, someone that just decided to become a Christian, moved in with us, lived with us for 3 months. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. You guys suck. And our sin affects other people. Unspiritual father, it affects your wife and your children. I won't get into that. I'm not one. Unspiritual person, it affects your friends and your loved ones. And they will really suffer because of you. And so Peter gives Timothy a charge. And it's delivered to all of us. 1 Timothy 4:16, it says, watch your life and your doctrine closely. Persevere in them, because if you do, you'll save both yourself and your hearers. And so our unspirituality affects those around us. But so does our righteousness. Our righteousness affects those around you. Not only did God rescue Daniel because of his righteousness, but it influenced the king to the point where he wanted to share his faith too. The king then states that everyone in his kingdom must love and fear the God that Daniel was rescued by. And so our life inspires others to evangelize for us. You know, there's many times where people have come out and they're like, who invited you? And it was someone else we invited that we actually haven't met them before. It was just through other visitors. I know we have an awesome Chinese lady called Season who visits our Bible talk every week. And she's been coming for months now. And every week she shows up with someone new that we've never met before. She's like, oh, it's my roommate. Oh, it's my classmate. Oh, I met him on the street. And she's evangelizing for us. And she meets really cool people. This one guy, his name was Lake. He came on Friday. And he was like popping jokes. He called me a sunburnt bogan. And I was like, this guy's Chinese and he's making Australian jokes. He gets the culture. I was like, who is this man? Season, please keep bringing more and more people. But it's really cool that, our faith, our life can inspire others to spread the message for us. I think even Daniel, he lives up to the name that he's been given. I think a few years ago during COVID, I reached out to hundreds of people online. And then, one of them was Daniel. And he responded. He's like, yeah, I want to get right with God. I want to come to your Bible talk. And then he got baptized. And that was through Instagram. And then we're sitting at Bible talk. And there's this guy sitting next to me. I thought I recognized him. He's like, no, I've never met you before. I'm like, okay, who are you? And he's like, oh, Daniel invited me on Instagram yesterday. And I was like, and you came to a stranger's house? He's like, yeah, man. I don't know. It said Bible. I can trust that. And so you can see that God has really just gone through it, the chain that Daniel was evangelized on Instagram. And now he's evangelizing on Instagram and being impactful from it. So I want to, close it out in another African proverb. The one who sees the lion will never be quicker than the one who the lion sees. So are you running towards or away from the lion's den? Are you running towards or away from the lion? 1 Peter 5, verse 8 to 9 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Stand firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." So if you can't see Satan, just know that he can see you. So run away from him and run towards God. Live a life for the one who loves you. Psalms 36, verse 7 says, "How priceless is your unfailing love, O God. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings." So in conclusion, the title of my lesson is, are you lion feed or are you living freed? Point number one, would I lie to you? You know, there was deceitful people in Daniel's life, and yet he still stood for the truth. Lion feed or living freed? Which one are you today? You know, the final proverb I have for you today is, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed. Every morning, a lion wakes up, and it knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. Doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better be running. So has this year been miraculous for you? Have you seen God's miracles? Have you been running? I want to give you a challenge. Study the Bible with those who brought you today and see how you can live a life of freedom as well. And if you're already freed, what are you doing about it? Run after a miracle before the year is through. And to God be all the glory.